Hello there. I am sitting here today with Chris Cooper. Who I'd like to introduce you to Chris Cooper. Chris, say hi.
Hello.
Hi, folks.
Hi.
Chris is the man behind an app called the Bless Every Home. It's now called the Bless app. And I want to ask Chris a few questions about the Bless app, a little bit about himself, so you get an idea of where his heart was in developing this app, and how important it is that applying some of the principles that were just placed on his heart, how important they are to all of us. So, Chris, maybe you could tell me a little bit about your background and what inspired, what inspired you to develop the Bless app.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Tim. I appreciate your having me on. And actually back in 1970, in the late 60s, and then 1970, my heartfelt goal was to go to India to find a guru, and I could study under the guru, and then if I gave him an offering of oranges and he ate my oranges, he could take away my bad karma.
And that was know that about you.
That was and then I really did want to go to India to find a guru, and then but I had a direct response advertising agency, and I had about 50 employees, and I found out that there were employees that were praying for me. And one night I had a vision where Jesus came to me in this vision, and it was kind of like a Star Wars tractor beam comes out of him into me, and it was one of those flying dreams. Have you ever had a flying dream? They're the best.
Oh yeah. As long as you don't crash.
So I and I thought, wow, I've had a different experience, and I knew it was Jesus. I mean, I knew he was the guy, right?
Awesome.
And
so you went out seeking something spiritual, and all these people are praying for you, and instead of what you thought you were looking for, these people praying for you, had a completely different experience than you expected.
Oh yeah. And then it was about a year later that I actually committed my life to Christ. And on that day, my life totally changed. And so much so, I mean, just everything that we were doing in our company and everything was about the kingdom. And then...
so let me get this straight. You were a successful business owner. 50 people worked for you. You came to know Christ, and then you went so far as realigning your company?
Right.
Wow. Okay. So you're realigning your company to what you feel Jesus wants you to do.
Right.
That's
So, in fact, I couldn't even think about anything else. That was, all of that was important. And then I had somebody came and said, we had a breakfast, and they said, hey, we have a vision that every person we live in Kansas City, would receive a clear presentation of the gospel and an invitation to receive Christ. And I said, wow, that's a big vision. How are you going to do that? And they told us about the Jesus Video Project. Okay. Now you talk about difference in technology. So these were the old VHS tapes, right?
Yeah.
And so,
I remember those.
So we were asked if my wife and I would head up the project so that every home in Kansas City might receive a Jesus video.
Okay.
And so we took on that project.
So that's what got you initially into the idea of going into a neighborhood with the gospel message.
Well, what I knew from these other people that had been praying for me and how that changed my life, I said, that's the key. We need to be praying for people that the Lord would reveal himself to them and they would come into the kingdom, right?
So how then, so this leads to the Bless Every Home app, these foundational steps. You come to know the Lord, you recognize that prayer is so important, and it's going into this community, taking some intentional steps towards reaching your neighbor. How does this, for people that might be unfamiliar with the Bless Every Home or the Bless app, how do churches and individuals, how might it help churches and individuals fulfill the Great Commission and the Great Commandment? How might it help them?
Right. So we felt like it's really the members of the church that are, if you got a church and the pastor is the only one that's sharing his faith, you're not going to have very much success. But if you can turn every member of the church into a missionary, and they are ministering to their own neighborhood, that's the key. That's how it explodes. So
you're giving for free to every church member a tool that's super easy to use that can turn them into a missionary, which, most churches will tell you when we go out, we're going, you're now entering the mission field. I know some churches have that placard over the door, now you're entering the mission field. Yeah. But oftentimes we're full of great hopes and aspirations and desire to do it, but the how-to sometimes is made super complicated with, you've got to memorize all these things, you've got to take all these certain steps, and sometimes people, at least when I'm out talking to folks, they tell me they're afraid. Right. They don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, and this app just says, well, just start with prayer. Just start, right. Here it is, it's super easy to use, it's free, and you don't have to even be technically wise. I mean, you mentioned VHS, sometimes just getting a VHS to record was like, it was not easy. This app is easy to use.
Well, right, and all you have to do, and because it starts so non-threatening, okay, so all we're asking people to do is pray, hey, will you pray for 5 neighbor homes a day, okay? Next day, you're going to pray for another, and then you can start prayer walking your neighborhood, and start associating people's names with what houses they're in.
Well, that's good because I can't remember everybody's name.
Right.
That's a great feature.
And for me, if somebody told me their name and I didn't remember their name when I saw them, then maybe I'd try.
It's such a personal. It's such a personal thing, and we're out trying to reach people for Jesus. Right. You don't get much personal than that. Right. So having their name at hand and a little help along the way to remember it, really that's such good stewardship to me. I'm being a good steward of doing what the Lord tells me to do, and I'm doing it in a friendly way. Right. And I'm loving them. I'm considering them. Consider others greater. Right. I'm making that intentional effort, and it's easily done this way. Yeah. So hey, let me keep this moving forward a little bit, Chris. Let me ask you then. There's a lot of pastors that may be hesitant about presenting this to their church congregation. This idea of technology. I mean, this is new. Can maybe if you can share a little bit about your vision. Your vision for how this app, and you've already kind of started that, for how this app can make a real difference, not just in the neighbor, but the pastor's leading his sheep, his flock, to make a difference in their community. Mm-hmm. How do you see? What is your vision in using this app to make a difference in the community, the broader community at large?
Right. So the key is to just get people to sign up. So there's a pastor, Shaddy Solomon, who is at Lake Mary Church here, and he came out onto the stage, and he was dressed up like Mr. Rogers, and he changed his sweater and shoes and stuff, and then he starts singing, "Won't you be my neighbor?" And everybody laughed. Well, he wasn't a great singer, but everybody laughed.
Oh, he's not watching this video.
He said, "It's okay." He just said, "Hey, seriously, we are going to love our neighbors, and we've got this little app, and I'm going to send you an email with a link, and you just click the link, and you will get your 40 closest neighbors, and we're going to pray for 5 neighbor homes a day." Okay. So. He had about 470 of his members signed up at that the first time. Okay. In the first month, that he presented it. Okay, he
So
did
you
that.
got 400 people praying.
Yeah, and then, but what he did was he had his people, his members who were doing this, is they would have these God incidences with their neighbor homes.
Okay.
That they would come in and he would have them introduce the offering, and they would tell the story about what happened when they interacted with their neighbor.
So they
And
were really
these were
embracing
great.
this technology
Oh,
in a way.
yeah.
So the missionaries, the people,
Right.
are sharing their mission story. So we love it when we hear from our foreign missionaries. You know, when in the Southern Baptist world, we hear from an IMB missionary. We hear from somebody who's overseas
Right.
about how God is working. And here we have, using this app, your church, they're sharing about their local mission field. Yeah, right down here past the 7-Eleven, you turn right, and there's a lady living back there that I want to talk to you about Jesus, and I got to meet with her, and stories like that. And
Right.
they're sharing that during the church service.
Yeah, and one lady, for example, was shared a back fence with the family over there, and they had a big bougainvillea bush.
Okay.
Right? And so
That's one of the little stickers on it that stabbed you.
the big stickers, they're big, and but they're beautiful.
Yes.
You know, but they grow like weeds.
Mhm.
And so she went out and she was trimming the bougainvillea bush, and the husband of the couple behind her got really mad at her, and she said, "You're taking away my wife's privacy," and I mean, he was really upset.
Mm.
So she went back because she had been prayed. I'm praying for this couple in my name, right? So she went in and she made a pan of brownies, and she walks around to the front of the house, and the husband comes to the door, and she says, "Listen, I am so sorry that I did that, and I'd like to propose that if I ever trim the bougainvillea bush, that first I get your permission and you tell me exactly how you want it trimmed." Okay.
Oh wow, she really
Yeah.
doing everything she can. isn't she?
Right. And that was it's humbling to go do something like that. And she said, "I just want you to know that I pray for you guys on a regular basis." And he grabbed her arm and pulled. He said, "You come back into my wife's room." She was sick and really sick and bad. And she said, "I want you to pray for her."
Oh my goodness. So what started out as
And now
as
they're really
an argument,
very
I suppose.
close, very close.
Wow. And all because she's praying for her.
And she got up, and she's very withdrawn. She's not outgoing or anything. And she got up and introduced the offering of the church.
Mm. So in this community, you've got these missionaries going out in this church, sharing this story. Tell me, how did this church? What came of this then? How in this church, utilizing this blessed app, would that pastor tell you, Mr. Rogers? Would he tell you how has that impacted their community today?
Oh, well, so it's been 30 months since the church started.
Mm-hmm.
In the first month, they had
470.
470. And then after 30 months, my wife and I had presented an award to them on Palm Sunday, and they had over 1,000 of their members had become lights.
Oh my!
They had adopted 25,000 homes, neighbor homes.
That's a lot of homes.
And they had prayed 500,000 times for those 25,000.
Wow.
It has changed.
So
ecosystem.
So you got 500,000 prayers going out, and in just over 2 years into a community where people now are maybe sharing brownies and praying with people.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So
And
it's definitely
changed the
increased
church
prayer.
for sure. It's
Wow.
because they're so excited, and it's just a natural rhythm. Okay, so actually the BLESS acronym is begin with prayer, listen, and then eat. So that stands for fellowship, right?
Okay.
So you have fellowship with them, and then the first S in bless is to serve. So somebody could try to serve them some way, and then the second S is story. So you tell your own story, and then you tell his story. So it's
okay.
very non-threatening.
It's very easy to
and
follow.
what they call
Bless.
it the bless rhythm. And the Ferguson, John and Dave Ferguson, who are the head of the big exponential church planting movement, wrote a book called Bless, and he tells all the stories and how to do it. So this app now helps lead people through the Bless rhythm. So it takes people who were really nervous about the idea of sharing their faith with and it's just so natural. You just start praying for them.
So that's one thing pastors, if they choose to adopt this and recommend this to the church, that's one thing they can expect right away, is that where a lot of pastors know that your folks are afraid, they don't have some method memorized, they perhaps found it difficult even to memorize a scripture like the Romans Road or something.
Yeah.
But this app, they can expect right away that even the most hard-pressed person will find it easy to pray. Maybe it's a 1-minute prayer, but for
Right.
5 of their neighbors, and they can expect that right away. This is a good-sized church that to start with 400. A lot of churches, most churches are much smaller than that. So let's bring this down to 60% of churches are only running like maybe 30 people. What could a church and a pastor in a church of maybe 30 people, or one of these small
Right.
churches, what might be some of the things that they could kind of expect right away?
Well, in fact, I'm glad you asked that, because really this should be a required process for a church plant, where every single member of that church plant core team is doing this with their own neighbors.
I can see where that would be a great tool
Yeah.
for a church plant.
Right. I was over at Shaddy's church one morning, and I was standing in the back, and there was this country-looking guy, kind of big guy, and I said, "Hey, are you a light?" And he says, "Oh yeah, I'm a light." And I said, "Well, could you tell me when you started praying for your neighbors, how has that changed your relationship with your neighbors?" He said, "Oh yeah, the first thing that the Lord did was change my own heart." He said,
So he hadn't been praying for any neighbors, probably.
Well, in fact, he was in a fight with the neighbor that was right next door to him, because they lived on a country
So he's
road.
probably praying they move,
Well,
if anything.
praying something. In fact, I can't tell you what he used to call his neighbor.
Okay, we'll edit that part out.
Okay, but they used to fight over a dirt road, an unpaved road that they shared, and they were always fighting over maintaining that road. And so he said, after I started praying for my neighbor, I clocked 40 hours on a backhoe fixing that country road, and his, and not more than that, but that the Lord showed him to see that neighbor through the eyes of Christ.
So I don't know if every pastor of a small church under 30 could expect these folks that haven't maybe been doing much to step up and start serving, but it does sound like your heart changes, and service could definitely be something. I think we get comfortable, Chris. To be honest with you, we get comfortable. We sit in the same chair when we go to or the pew when we go to church. We kind of say the same prayers sometimes. It's easy for our devotional life to get boiled down into a routine where we just go about doing things, and suddenly, instead of going to church and noticing something that needs to be fixed, or something that we need to do, we tend to overlook it, and we don't see like we did when we have fresh new eyes. But prayer can cause us, like it did with this individual, to take a fresh look. It's kind of like Pentecost. Everything's brand new. You've got the church. The Holy Spirit is there. Everything's fresh. You have a new view, a new insight.
Yeah.
Prayer can do that. And unlike getting comfortable with things, prayer like this, authentic prayer, and going through these blessed steps can really keep you revitalized in your ongoing mission in your own field. And I think that's something certainly a pastor, and any pastor, would be very encouraged to see that. We're kind of getting near the end of our time, Chris, so let me ask you, some of the concerns might be what do people express to be maybe some of the concerns they might have about using this app, and what have you found that have ways that maybe they've overcome it? I mean, outside of just getting there and trying and seeing it's really pretty easy, what are some of the concerns that you've heard expressed maybe that a pastor could
and that's a great question
to look at?
Because a lot of the same word comes up a lot of times is this is creepy.
Creepy.
They say, whoa, wait a minute, how do people know my name?
Yeah, I can see
and
that.
You know, well, do you remember the old white page phone directories?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, all of these names are publicly available. Probably 90% of the names of people's names are
actually,
right online.
Pretty
You
much
can
Google
find
everybody in
them
your neighborhood and find out maybe something you don't want to know.
Well, but all we really do is take the name and address and we put it in there, and then people can also put their own friends, and they don't just, it's not limited to their own neighbors. They can have people in other states. They can have them
this
overseas.
Is good for a church maybe where your church is maybe not in your community, but you're a person in that community. So, which are a lot of our churches. There was a time when it was radius to the church because people walked or drove to church, but today, especially in Florida, we've got turnpike, and you can go to church anywhere. So it might be quicker to drive down the road to go to a church than it is to drive to one that's a few blocks away. It's just the nature of things.
And look how
that's
many
ideal.
people
you can be any place
after COVID
and have your mission field.
Yeah, and after COVID, so many members of a church are remote, and they're just tuning in. Well, they're still members of the church, and they're involved. So it's this is a way you can plug them in, and to the whole. Even if, because a lot of churches, like you're saying, they had a church downtown, and a lot of people moved out, and so you can serve those people, and they're not.
So it's really not creepy when we think about it that way. This is public information.
Yeah, it's just public.
It's just made so easy for a church goer to access through the Bless app. That really is just a strategic tool of information that's out there. It's not creepy. And I suppose that might be something we shouldn't look at that way. What we should look at is a list of people Jesus told us to love. Jesus said, love your neighbor. And this is a great tool to know them by name.
Right.
And what a real missionary advantage it is to know somebody's name. It says something to a person when you go up to them and you remember their name,
and
instead of being dude, hey dude,
sure.
hey you, what's
right.
up, man, guy, It
but
really,
in
says a
contrast,
personal,
people don't
I
realize.
care about you personally.
Okay, so typically I'll just ask them, hey, do you use Facebook or one of the social media?
No, that's not
creepy.
creepy.
Yeah, I use, and then I'd say, okay, have you ever clicked the like button on anything? And it's, oh yeah, I do that all the time. Well, you have no idea how much they know about you.
Yeah, that's not creepy at all.
I mean,
over on the side, I'm seeing things that my wife and I were just talking about 20 miles minutes ago being sold to me. How did they know that?
Oh yeah. So that's the least of, but you can. There's some ways you can choose not to have your name available on the internet, and we even help people get off the web.
Okay. So if somebody's really concerned about that, and that's an issue, and I understand that there are cases where maybe somebody does need to not be available.
Right.
And I've noticed that in my Bless app,
Yeah.
there are some of my neighbors who I know, and they're just not listed there, and there may be a valid reason. I still try to reach them; they just don't show up in the app. So
Yeah.
not so much a creepy thing. Chris, let me kind of wrap this up a little bit. What final words of encouragement would you offer to pastors who right now are just at the point where they're considering the Bless Every Home or the Bless app? What word of encouragement do you have for them?
Okay, well, the number one thing is that I believe every church was planted by God to help their neighbors become reproducing disciples of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's not just a little social club. We're here for a purpose. And the key is to have every member be a missionary.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we equip them to do that in a non-threatening way? And if you can start with, in fact, very famous business leader said if you can get 17% of your people to embrace a core value, and this is whether it's business or any kind of an organization, that within a few years you can have 80% of your people embracing that core value.
So I guess if a church pastor saying, here's this great tool, and church is a little standoffish, if he can get his early adopters and maybe a few more people,
right,
to just kind of go try it out for a while,
right,
then their own stories of success, if you will, maybe they come back and relate. It's easy to use, and it encouraged me to bring some brownies to my neighbor and to pray for them. And I, hear stories like you had shared. My neighbor, once they found out I was praying about me, asked me to come pray with them, and it just opened the door. Those very stories could encourage the rest of the church to come on board. And then what they are doing now on in some manner, some way, shape, or form could really grow into being something. There is one more thing, and I'm going to close mentioning this, that if a church joins, there's a fee. I think it's $20 for any size church.
$20 a month for the whole church.
And that's really, that's nothing. The pastor and the church leadership, there's a dashboard, and the dashboard has tons of information. You don't have to do any additional work, pastor. You'll see all kinds of data that will be encouraging, that will tell you about the mission field where your people who have affiliated with the church. Likewise, in the association, if the church is affiliated with the association, we can see reports of how we're doing in the county, so that how we are doing collectively. The advantage the offer that's being offered to us is once 20 of our churches sign up, is that the Bless Every Home folks are going to give us the free new movers part, which would be $25 a month additionally. They're going to give that to us for free. Pastors, you'll get some more information on your dashboard in regard to new movers. You'll also get 25 people that are new movers in your area, and these are not people that are just moving month to month. They filter those out, so you'll get qualified 25 people who are new movers. The data tells us that if you are the first church within the first 2 weeks of somebody moving into that neighborhood, that it's very likely they're going to come visit your church first. And if somebody in your church has reached out to them in a personal way as a light and said, hey, you live right down the road from me, I see that you're a new mover, and let me tell you a little bit about this church on the road that I go to, we'd love to see there. Chances are that new mover, they're going to choose your church to attend, and eventually, very likely, it's going to be your church, because somebody in your church did that relational part in that prayer. Very likely, it's going to be your church that they attend. So, do consider this. Don't be too quick to weigh it out. It's not going to give you additional work. Actually, you might find that it frees you up to do the things that you love. You all love people. You'd love to see your church loving on people like Jesus, and I believe that this app can help you make a huge difference. So, Chris, thank you so much today. Thank you, pastors, for sticking with this. If you made it this far, God bless you. You've done great. I love all of you. God bless each and every one of you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Tim.